Welcome to part number 2 of Matchday number 3 of the MLS is Back Tournament Group Stage Preview. And yes, this is a Red Bulls jersey. I've just recently got this a couple of days ago on Full Moon Jersey on eBay. And Full Moon Jersey is really where I get most of these MLS jerseys nowadays, since most of these jerseys are incredibly cheap. Most of them start at only $15. And although some of these jerseys are kind of a little bit outdated and that teams don't actually wear these jerseys anymore, it's still worth it to get some of these very cheap ones compared to buying the current ones that cost like about $90 to just get a replica one. So that being said, let us actually get into the second part of this preview, which we're going to look at the last 7 games that's going to be happening on the third match day of the MLS is Back Tournament Group Stage. And I think at this point, I am going to say that in terms of the scenario of how each of these teams can move on, I think the scenario for these teams is pretty easy. All you have to do is just get to the 4-point mark. I think 4 points should be enough, theoretically, to move on into the next round, as long as you don't have a very ugly goal differential. But yeah, with the way that, you know, how these matches going to be, we'll see what's going to happen at the end of the day, and that who exactly is going to be those 4th team that finish as the best 3rd place team in this group stage to move on. With that being said, let us actually get into the first game, and let me just lower this a little bit. There we go, because I need to see the time here to do the timestamp. And the first game is the Montreal Impact versus DC United. This game is going to be kicking off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Pacific time. I don't know why in the world this game is kicking off so late, while the Western Conference matchup the very next day between RSL and SKC kicks off at 9 a.m. Eastern and 6 a.m. Pacific. And unfortunately, the people in Salt Lake City will have to wake up 7 in the morning to watch this, while the people in Kansas City unfortunately have to watch 8 a.m. to watch this game. But yeah, just don't question in terms of some of these questionable decisions of how the schedule makers make the schedule. This is basically how it is, and that we're unfortunately left with such an inconvenient times of scheduling Eastern Conference team deep into the night while scheduling Western Conference team early in the morning as their kickoff. But going back to this, Montreal, of course, they lost 4-3 in that crazy Canadian Classique against TFC, while DC United once again got an incredibly lucky draw in this MLS's Back Tournament as they draw 1-1 against the New England Revolution. For Montreal, it's pretty simple. They need to win and hope to be in a chance where they can be the best 3rd place team to move on into the next round. And if you're a team that currently have 3 points or you currently have 0 points in this tournament, you know that you need to definitely improve on that, because I think 3 points is really the bare minimum that you need to meet if you want to be one of those best 3rd place team. And even then, if you get 3 points heading into the end of the group stage, there is still no guarantee that you can actually be one of those best 3rd place team, which is why all these teams that are sitting with 0 points, they're definitely in a difficult situation, and they're definitely are watching other game and praying that other team can help them out so that they can, of course, make sure be one of those best four 3rd place team, despite the fact they only have 3 points. Now for DC, it's pretty simple for them. They can, of course, move on with a win. A draw could be a little bit interesting because they'll be sitting at 0 goal differential, and they also will have 3 points. And again, 3 points heading into the knockout stage to determine whether or not if you are one of those best 3rd place team is a very, very difficult situation. Ideally, you want to be at that 4-point mark if you want to have a chance to be one of the best third place team out of, or the best one of those 4 teams that end up to be the best 3rd place team to move on into the next round. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting game. I'm assuming for the Impact, they gotta go for it. Like, I think Thierry Henry, there's no doubt that his team need to really go at it, which is something that is not what Montreal likes to do. But at the same time, knowing the fact that they gotta believe that this DC team, so far with how much luck that they have involved in terms of some of the goals that they have scored so far, they gotta believe that they should not have any fear whatsoever to just go forward on the attack and make sure they get enough goals to potentially win this game. Because as I said before, with all these teams with 0 points, one of the other best chance that you can do to improve yourself to be one of those best third place team, even though you have 3 points, is that you got to make sure you have a ton of goal score so you can improve your goal differential. And I have a feeling one of the last best third place team out of those 4 teams is going to be a team that has 3 points and has the best goal differential out of the other team that sits with 3 points heading into third place. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Group D fixture between RSL versus SKC, as I mentioned. And as I mentioned, for whatever reason, this game is kicking off at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific time, which will drive a lot of people in Salt Lake City and Kansas City very angry with the way that they have to watch their team play in a decisive third game bright and early in the morning. Now, RSL, of course, drew 0-0 to Minnesota, while SKC got a very, very fortunate win against Colorado as they won 3-2 against them. Both teams, they can, of course, move on with a draw or a win. Obviously, for RSL, this pretty much is true for them, because if they can get a draw or a win in this game, they can be either in 7 points or they could currently be in 4 points. And actually, technically, if they get a win in this, they actually top the group, because it doesn't matter what the Loons, of course do, since they have a better goal differential than Minnesota has. If they can get a win against SKC, they will top Group D. Well, for SKC, obviously they're sitting with 3 points. A draw will get them to that target 4-point mark, but I'm pretty sure that they also want to make sure that they can get a win so that they automatically got themselves through into the next round. And technically for RSL, I would also say that a loss for them could make them move on into the next round, because they have a +2 goal differential right now, and as long as if RSL doesn't concede like 2+ goal, and I really think of all these 4-point team that is going to be fighting for those best third place spot, as long as if you get 4 points and you don't have a negative goal differential, I think most likely you're going to be one of those best third place team out of those 4 team that is moving on. And right now RSL, I just don't see how they can, of course, concede like 2 goals in this, especially they're one of the 2 teams in this tournament to have yet to concede a goal in this. And I also have a feeling this might not be the most entertaining game, because from what I've seen from RSL games so far, they have been kind of a little bit scrappy at times, and things isn't really as excited as you want it to be. And knowing the fact that I'm not quite sure if Albert Rusnak is going to be starting for RSL in this game, or actually going to be coming back after he suffered the injury in the last game. RSL is going to be trying to grind a draw in this game, knowing the fact that a draw, of course, will move them on into the next round. Whereas for SKC, yeah, they really need to find a way to score goals in this game. And scoring goals, for the last 2 games, yes, it wasn't really a problem against Colorado, since they, of course, scored 3 goals, but those 3 goals came after when Colorado went down to 10 men and eventually went down to 9 men in a game. And when you're facing against a very stingy RSL defense, and you don't really have a good record in terms of scoring with 11 men on the field, something tells me they probably won't be scoring a lot of goals in this game. And again, I really think this could be a very boring game, and that if you're a neutral and you want to watch this and you don't have involved, obviously I will keep an eye on this game, since, they're in the same group of Minnesota, and this game can really affect whether or not if the Loons could potentially move on or actually finish top of this group. So, yeah, I will keep a close eye on this, but if you're a neutral and you want to watch an exciting game, this might not be the one that you want to keep an eye on. But moving on into the next match is FC Cincinnati versus the New York Red Bulls. So this game is going to be kicking off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. FC Cincinnati, of course, won 1-0 against Atlanta, which was probably one of the most surprising results of this tournament, while the Red Bulls, of course, lost 2-0 against a Columbus team that looked like they are now the favorites of potentially winning this tournament. A win by either of these teams will help them move on into the next round. Well, for a draw of this team, for the Red Bulls, they might have a chance to potentially move on into the next round, although they will have kind of like a -1 goal differential if they do draw this game, and sitting at 4 points, and that could be a little bit tedious depending on how many teams that actually finish with 4 points in third place. Well, for FC Cincinnati, yeah, a minus 3 goal differential sitting with 4 points is definitely not a comfortable situation. And then they're also going to be praying the fact that if they do get 4 points in this tournament, they got to make sure that no other team, there's not more than 4 teams that actually finish with 4 points heading into third place, because if that's the case, they might be the one that might be left out because of that ugly goal differential that they had. But either way, a loss for either of these teams could really damage their chances of moving on into the next round, and that, I don't know. I think both of these teams probably will play it safe and trying to get a draw out of this game, but at the same time, if they can get a win in this game, they can get that second spot and don't have to worry about what other team does. So maybe we'll see both teams kind of go at it each other, or it could be just a very boring game, just like the previous one I mentioned between RSL versus SKC. But yeah, moving on into the next match is the other Group D fixture between the Colorado Rapids versus Minnesota. This game kicks off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Minnesota drew 0-0 in that forgettable game against RSL, while Colorado, of course, lost that heartbreaker against SKC, and kind of were playing 12 men in that game against Sporting KC as they lost 3-2 in that one. For Colorado, they simply need to win this game. Like, if they do not win this game, or if they get a draw out of this game against the Loons, they are going to be eliminated from this tournament. And they also will have to hope that SKC will lose as well to stay alive, because if SKC does win their match, or if they draw their match, then they will also be eliminated from this tournament, because SKC will have 4 points and they will be off. Or, well, it's either going to be SKC or Minnesota is going to be occupied for that third spot, and that Colorado will just miss out in that third spot if they only have 3 points. So they need a lot of help, Colorado, to potentially move on to the next round. Well, for the Loons, they don't really need a lot of help. All they need to do is to get a win or a draw, and that, I have a feeling, Minnesota, I really want to see the Loons attack more and be a little bit more aggressive going forward on the attack. Like, I understand the last game, maybe the reason why they were being a little bit complacent is they kind of play into the game of the way that both teams just kind of being very complacent and not really want to risk going for of conceding a goal that could potentially damage their chances of moving into the next round. And knowing the fact that Colorado is a team that, they obviously are going to lose two players that is not going to be playing in this game, in Jack Price and, oh god, who was the other player that Danny Wilson, the other player that got sent off in the game that is not playing in this one. I'm really hoping Minnesota can be a little bit more aggressive and just really go for that top spot in this group, because if we can win this game, and depending on how this RSL and SKC game is going to finish, and if RSL does lose that game, then we could actually top the group. So I'm hoping Minnesota will be a little bit more aggressive on the attack and trying to get all 3 points. While for Colorado, yeah, even though they're very depleted right now, they really have to go for it right now, because their chances of moving on is dwindling a lot by the fact that a lot of those teams are currently in their group are sitting in a much better position than they are in right now. Speaking of teams that is sitting in a much better position than the team that currently have 0 points, that of course is the Vancouver Whitecaps. So after the Vancouver Whitecaps lost 3-0 to the Seattle Sounders and put their goal differential to now at -4, they are in a very tough spot right now in terms of moving on into the next round. Now, Chicago, on the other hand, they of course lost 2-0 to the Quakes, although they could still move on if they can get a win in this game, and theoretically they could also move on if they can get a draw in this game. But obviously they're going to have, if they do draw this game, they're going to be in third spot, and I'm pretty sure Seattle fan will be definitely keep a close eye on this and really hope this game will either be a draw or Vancouver beat Chicago, because if Chicago do not win in this game, then Seattle will take that second spot to move on into the next round. And as I said, Vancouver, they need a lot of help and definitely need a win to potentially move on into the next round. And I just don't see how they can do that. Even though Chicago in the last game, they definitely did not look impressive. I thought Vancouver, so far, of all the teams that I've seen in this tournament, the Whitecaps are one of the weakest and probably the weakest team in this tournament. Like, you know, that Seattle game, it was really tough to watch of them just kind of really struggle, and that they have no attacking power whatsoever, mainly because of those 5 players that did not decide to make the trip to Orlando, and that they're basically putting a USL level kind of attack against an MLS defense, and that usually does not go up very well for a team. So yeah, I think the Whitecaps, even though, you know, right now I feel like they're just playing for pride, and that this tournament is kind of just a learning experience for a lot of these youngsters that is on their team right now, and that I don't think Marc Dos Santos is expecting this team to move on, which is why I think if you're the Chicago Fire, you got to take advantage of getting a win in this game. Like, if it seems like this is, I hate to say this, and I kind of said this when I was doing review of these simulated matches when MLS was in a pause. This is basically a free win for the Chicago Fire. The Whitecaps are gifting you all 3 points, and if you do not take this gift to get all 3 points, then something tells me you don't deserve to move on into the next round. So we'll see whether or not if Chicago can take this free points that the Whitecaps pretty much is giving to everybody in this game. But now moving on into the last 2 games of this match, and another team that is in a very desperate situation, and probably a team that might be on their way out of Orlando and look like they're pretty much going to be eliminated anytime soon, is of course the LA Galaxy, who they are going to be playing against the Houston Dynamo. This game of course kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm not quite sure why I wrote Eastern time there. That should have been Pacific time. The Galaxy, of course, lost 6-2 against LAFC in probably the most embarrassing loss we've seen so far a team suffer, besides FC Cincinnati losing 4-0 to their in-state rival. And the Dynamo, unfortunately, lost 2-1 against the Portland Timbers. Now, Houston, of course, they could move on into the next round with a win, while the Galaxy, they're in the same situation that the Vancouver Whitecaps is in, where they need to win this game and they need to rely a ton of help. And I think they're probably even in a tougher situation than the Whitecaps is in, because right now they have the worst goal differential of any team right now in this tournament with -5. And unless if they can, of course, completely do what LAFC did to them the other night against the Houston Dynamo, I just don't see how, even if they get a win in this game, they can make up that ugly goal differential that they had in terms of moving on into the next round. Especially now that, you know, they don't have Chicharito going forward. And I know, even though I said it seemed like they look better without Chicharito going forward, that the attack can actually score more goals. Well, then you also have to worry about the defense too, because the defense has, as expected, been absolutely hot garbage. And did I also mention the fact that the Galaxy are playing probably a team that is the last team they want to face in a situation where they really need a win, or they need a resort in terms of moving on into the next round? That is the Houston Dynamo. Like, this team has really been just kind of the spoiler of the Galaxy for the past couple of seasons, and I have a feeling the Dynamo could potentially do it again. And believe it or not, I feel like when you look at these two teams, the Dynamo look like potentially the better team than it is the Galaxy, and that I feel like for the Dynamo, as long as if they can actually start to finish some of their chances that they of course miss in that game against LAFC, and especially miss those chances in against the Portland Timbers, I think they should be, of course, able to win. But that being said, the Dynamo are also without Albert Valise in this game. So, yeah, that dynamic kind of play from the wing is going to be sorely missed for the Houston Dynamo in this game. But now moving on into the last game of this preview. is probably one of the most anticipated game that I'm waiting for in this last group stage game in this tournament, and probably one of the most anticipated group stage game that is not really kind of like a rivalry, but it kind of looks like it. And that, of course, is LAFC versus the Portland Timbers, which kicks off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. LAFC, of course, won 6-2 against the Galaxy, while Portland won 2-1 against Houston. LAFC can, of course, move on to the next round with a win and a draw. And I believe with a win, they should be able to top the Group F. While Portland, of course, can clinch top spot with a win or a draw. And I think, Portland right now, they are pretty much secure their spot into the next round, which that kind of makes me wonder, does Giovanni Savarese decide to rest his guy? Because this game, this is going to be a difficult decision that Savarese will have to make, where, you already clinched your spot to play in the next round, but you have a chance to clinch the top spot, and you know that if you decided to not play your strongest squad, you virtually probably just gave LAFC the top spot, knowing the fact that, if you're not putting your best team against LAFC, and most team, when they decide to play their best team against LAFC, they still struggle in terms of keeping up against them. So if you play your second team against LAFC, yeah, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. So that's going to be a difficult decision that Savarese is going to make, where, do he think about getting that top spot, and do he think to basically put a strong lineup against LAFC so that he can, of course, clinch that top spot? Because I think if Portland does put their strongest lineup against LAFC, I do have a feeling they can get a win against LAFC. Like I said before, I think besides the Seattle Sounders, if there's one other team I think could definitely trouble LAFC, is the Portland Timbers. Because LAFC, the way that they play, which is a team that loves to have the ball and trying to push teams high and trying to just pretty much play that non-stop attacking stuff that Bob Bradley tends to love his team to play, really favorites the Portland Timbers, because the Portland Timbers is a team that loves to sit back and trying to hit you on the counter attack. And knowing what happened in that game against the Houston Dynamo, where I thought the Dynamo did something similar to what Portland did, which is they decided to sit back and trying to counter them, and how LAFC had a lot of trouble in terms of dealing the Dynamo counter attack. I feel like this is just going to play into Portland's hand, and that I feel like LAFC is going to have to be ready to face something similar that they did against the Houston Dynamo, which is a team that is going to be relentless whenever they go on the counter attack. But the good news is, at least for LAFC, like the Dynamo game, I think they should be able to penetrate this Timbers team. Like, I do still have some concern about this defense from the Timbers. Yes, I know they only conceded 2 goals throughout this tournament, but there's been times where that Timbers defense have kind of cracked a little bit, and that when I look at that back line, and I don't have a lot of trust in terms of them facing an LAFC team that has just been a free scoring team and are the highest goal scoring team so far in this tournament, and that is without Carlos Vela heading into this tournament. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting chess match, and again, I'm very interested to see not only in terms of what is at stake in terms of who can potentially clinch the top spot, but also really what is the tactical standpoint and the important decision that both of these head coach is going to make heading into this one. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of the second part of the last match day for the MLS's back tournament. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? And as always, let me know in the comments of your prediction for all these 7 matches that is left for the last match day of the MLS's back tournament group stage. And yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.